Hello world, we are live. Welcome to the March 2025 edition of the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. My name is Dan Sapels. I'm a developer at Vehicle, and along with my co-host, Margaret Tavares, we are pleased to once again bring you some awesome insights from fellow Laravelians from the Laravel community. Speaking of my co-host, Margaret, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty awesome today, Dan. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Yeah, we are rolling into spring here in Canada. There's a lot of exciting events and things coming up in the next number of months. So actually, before we get to our speaker, Simon, today, let's go through some of those community related things.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. All right. So some stuff that's happening in the community. So you can check out laravelnews.com, ran by the awesome Eric Barnes. They have a weekly email newsletter. And really in this newsletter, they post about all the news in the Laravel community. So if you want to know what's going on, please check them out. They also have a podcast ran by Jake Bennett and Michael Drinda. So in this podcast, they discuss all the latest Laravel releases. And in their last week, it was about Svelte starters, document conversion, and Playwright. So make sure to check them out at laravelnews.com. Up next is Laravel Podcast, hosted by the wonderful Matt Stauffer. In the latest episode, he's joined by Joe Tannenbaum. So Joe is Laravel's open source engineering team lead, and they're chatting about the VS Code extension, Inertia 2.0, and some open source stuff. So if you want to learn more, please check them out at laravelpodcast.com. For anyone who hasn't heard about Larajobs, it's a great place if you are looking to hire some Laravel developers, looking to post a job, and really for all your Laravel job needs, you can check them out at laraveljobs.com. And to highlight some of the companies that from this month, from the community that are looking for some Laravel and PHP developers, Nord Health and On The Go Systems are hiring. So if you'd like some more information, make sure to check out our description on the YouTube link, a video here after the live meetup. We'll have some more information in the description below. Laracast is a great platform, so big thank you to Jeffrey Way for running this awesome resource. So if you're looking to build your Laravel skills and learn with others in the Laravel community, make sure to check them out at laracast.com if you want to learn some Laravel. All right, as for some upcoming events that are happening, you can check out Laravel Live Pakistan on April 12th. So this is a great event for any tech enthusiasts for a day of learning, some networking, and some inspiration. So you can check them out at laravellive.pk. As well as Laravel Live UK. This will be happening on June 10th and 11th. So make sure to check them out at laravellive.uk. There's going to be a lot of live stuff going on. It's all online, so please check them out. And Laracon US will be happening this year in Denver, Colorado. So that's happening July 29th and 30th. Tickets are available to purchase, so please check them out at laracon.us. Another online event that's pretty great to go and attend is the GTA PHP user group. It's a global community you can check out, and they're a hybrid meetup group, so they do some stuff in person and online. So if you'd like to meet a talented group of PHP developers, you can check them out at meetup.com. Also, big thank you to our sponsor, Vehicle, for helping to relaunch this meetup. So they have a great team of developers, and if you have a Laravel problem, they'd be happy to help you out. So make sure to hit them up at go@vehicle or vehicle.com. We are also running a giveaway, so big thank you to our sponsor, JetBrains. So if you're looking to have a couple of one-year subscription codes to any JetBrains IDE, make sure to scan that QR code. We'll have that contest running up until April 1st. So if you do win, you will be contacted. So make sure to scan that QR code and enter.
We'll show the QR code at the end of the stream as well.
Thank you so much, Dan. And I'll pass it off to you to introduce our speaker for this month.
And there we have it. Our speaker this month is Simon Hamp. Simon is the co-creator of a very cool project, if you're not familiar, Native PHP, which I first came to know, I think, Laracon US a couple summers ago when Marcel gave a presentation introducing Native PHP. And then more recently, Simon was a speaker at Laracon EU just back in February, where he unveiled sort of the next evolution of Native PHP, Native PHP for mobile. That it's going to allow you to run PHP and Laravel on a mobile device, which is incredibly cool. And I was saying to Simon earlier, there must have been a lot of learning that's gone on. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Simon, how are you today? Oh, you're muted at the moment. There we go.
Yeah. Classic. I'm good. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. I'd like to thank you once again for joining us. I think this is one of those talks where there's a different tech stack than we're used to dealing with. So I think you said you're hoping to share some of the lessons learned from building Native PHP for mobile. So very much looking forward to that.
Cool. Good.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, Simon, we can hand it off to you.
Let's try this. don't show these tips again. I'm gonna do screen 2.
There we go. All right, I can see the screen. Perfect. We
Got
are
it?
good to go, Simon. Margaret and I will just step backstage, and the stage is yours.
Good luck.
Thanks very much.
Talk soon.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining on this little behind the scenes look at how Native PHP for mobile came into existence. I'm going to do a little bit of a preamble about Native PHP in case you've not heard of it. Dan did a great job, but I'm just going to add a few little details. So if you're not aware, Native PHP is a project that lets you build desktop and mobile applications using PHP and Laravel. It started life a couple of years ago, and one of the things that's been constantly asked, I will say, is, will this ever work on mobile? And the answer is yes. So last month, I announced Native PHP for iOS, and we also shared that Apple, in particular, have accepted having a native PHP app be deployed through their iPhone App Store, which is an amazing milestone for me personally, but mostly for PHP and the Laravel community. And I think it's an amazing thing that's going to unlock lots of potential for hopefully all of you. So I want to share today a little bit more about how exactly it works, and we'll have a look at an app that's running on a real phone. So I'll share that with you as well. And then I'm just going to try and share a few of the learnings that I've had along the way, and we can have a sneak peek at some of the stuff that's coming in the next few weeks and months. So without further ado, what you can see in front of you right now is Sublime Text. Yeah, you probably got that. But it's also a project called Static PHP CLI. This is the thing that basically allowed Native PHP and a whole other bunch of projects to come into existence. You might be familiar with Laravel Herd. You might have heard of Franken PHP. There are a number of other projects as well that use Static PHP CLI. And they've all really become available because of the way that this project allows us to build PHP binaries that can be distributed across different platforms and operating systems. Unfortunately, one of the platforms that I would love for this project to support that it doesn't support is iPhone. I use an iPhone, and we could also extend that to Android. So I went on a path about a year ago to try and figure out if it was even possible to run PHP binaries on an iPhone. And it turns out, sadly, it's not. You can't take a PHP binary that's been built by Static PHP CLI and just put it on a phone inside your application. Apple don't allow that, basically. So what do we do? How have we got PHP running on an iPhone when we can't just ship binaries to the phone? Well, that's where a whole load of the things that I've been doing have come into play, and the learnings that I've had around how to compile PHP in a certain way, and then how to get all of its dependencies together so that we can bundle it all up nicely into an iPhone application and then use it. So I want to run through some of those right now, and then we'll move on to some slides. So this hopefully will be a bit more of the interesting part because it's going to be focused on the code. So the first thing that we need to do is build PHP into what we call a static library. And this is an embeddable C library. And PHP has been able to do this for a while. And it's just not very commonly used, certainly not in our world of web development. We're very familiar with having PHP be compiled in a dynamic way, and you get your very small PHP executable, and you have all of your extensions as dynamic libraries that you attach to PHP at runtime, essentially. And you run all of that underneath a web server, and the web server basically masks all of this complexity for us to a certain extent. And we're basically breaking out of that world entirely. And we're saying we need to just build PHP from scratch, and we need to put everything together in one nice little package that we can put on an iPhone. So the first thing we have to do is figure out how to compile for an iPhone. And that is complicated. I'm not going to lie. I was originally going to show you a whole bunch of build scripts and things that I've used, bash scripts that are just made up of lots of little pieces and flags and all sorts of things, which if you're not familiar with compiling C applications would be maybe slightly confusing. But what I've done in the last few weeks, which I think is really more compelling, is to build all of this functionality into the static PHP CLI library. And this will be open source soon. So we're going to start here. This is a PHP class, which is basically just mimicking all of those bash scripts that I was using before. But what this does is set up the environment that we're going to run this command that's going to build PHP for us in a way that it's going to build it for iOS. And I'm not going to go into all of the detail of how that happens. This library is quite complex and there's lots of things to consider. But the most important thing is we can't just compile PHP. We have to also compile its dependencies. So we have to compile things like curl, OpenSSL, SQLite, and more. All of the dependencies that we want to use as extensions of PHP need to be compiled for iOS as well. And then they all need to be bundled together. So this library allows us to do all of that in one go. And we'll see that working in a moment. Excuse me. So here we have basically the setup for these flags that have to be passed in to say we're going to build for iOS. And then later on, we pick out things like which libraries and extensions we want to build. And all of this is defined in the config for this library. So let's just have a look at one of these as an example. In fact, let's have a look at the next important thing that we have to do to get iOS, native PHP for iOS. And that's have our custom extension. So it's fine just to have PHP running on the phone. But the thing that we really, really want to do is run native code from PHP so that in our Laravel application, we can just call nice PHP functions, APIs that we're used to in a way that we're comfortable with, and it will trigger behavior on the device. And to achieve that, we have to write some custom C code that's going to be compiled into our application somewhere. And in this case, we compile it as an extension to PHP. So this is our custom extension. This is effectively telling the static PHP CLI library, please go and fetch this extension. We tell it where to get it from as well. And build this when you build PHP. And also build a bunch of these other things. Maybe. We'll define these when we actually run the build. But as long as we've got configuration for them in this JSON file or in a few of these JSON files, let's have a look at this one as well so you can see how it actually gets built up. So this is our native PHP extension source. From there, we can then run the command to build. And as long as we've got all of the things right, this has taken a long time to get right, but as long as we've got all of those things right, then it will build. So what I'm going to do now is actually run a PHP build live. We won't wait for it because it does take a couple of minutes. I'll keep talking and we can move on. But just to give you an idea, here we've got this simple command. This is the static PHP CLI libraries build command. We're telling it the extensions that we want to compile for iOS. We want it to be an embeddable. So we're saying build embed. And then I've added this stuff about which operating system we actually want to build for, because static PHP CLI by default will build for the platform that it's running on. So I'm running on a Mac, so it will build for a Mac. If you were running on Windows, it would build for Windows. But we want to build for a different platform. So I've extended it to allow it to take iOS and iOS sim for the simulator, because you have to build them differently. I'm going to run it with all the debug stuff, and we're going to rebuild. So I'm just going to kick that off. And we can watch that from the side. But you'll see lots of stuff happening there for a few minutes. Back over here, let's have a look at the, oh no, that's not, I wanted that to stay on top. Sorry, let's keep that in view. Back over here, I want to look at the actual extension. So in here, we can look at our native PHP extension. The native PHP extension is a very simple piece of code. Essentially, it's one file, this C file. And this defines the functionality that we want to make available to PHP, but it doesn't actually do the functionality yet. So we're basically setting up placeholders here for what will be properly implemented on iOS and on Android later, in Swift and Java, to actually do the functionality on the user's device based on this. And what this allows, as a simple example, this function that we're declaring here, we're saying native PHP share. So we want to have a function that looks like this in PHP, native PHP underscore share, and then it's going to receive some parameters. And we don't know what that's going to do yet, but when we call that, it should do something on the device. How that operates is here, this PHP function definition tells PHP what to do. So we receive the parameters, we store some of those, and then we basically pass it to another function. So this is a C function that PHP will pass all of our parameters to and do the work. Now, this C function exists only here at the moment. So this is an empty function, and we call that a no op. It's not doing anything, but it basically says, if you need me, I'm here, and I'll do nothing. But what it allows us to do is override it later on, and we'll come to that in a second. So when we run native PHP share in our PHP Laravel application, when we call that function in our PHP userland code, it runs this C function, which is going to do something on the device. When you look at this, hopefully in these, I've explained it in nice, simple terms, you might think that this is very straightforward. And the truth is, it is. It's very simple stuff once this is going. The hard part, actually getting to this, was building PHP for iOS. That took months. So this bit, kind of easy, which is great. Then this gets compiled into our build for PHP. So it looks like that's done. Let's just have a quick look to see what's happened here. We're going to run to the end, and we can see it's built. It's built PHP for us. Let's have a look where that goes. So I'm skipping a few steps here, but essentially we end up with two bits of information that we want that need to go into our Swift application. We end up with header files. So we have all of the dependencies header files. And then we also have basically the binaries. They're not binaries, they're libraries, but they have all of the C objects in them that we need in order to run PHP and its dependencies. So those are these .a files for iOS. This is a Mac-ism, basically. And with that in the right place and configured in the right way, PHP suddenly comes to life in our application, in our iPhone application. So we have this definition. We won't look at this in too much detail, but this basically tells our Swift application, that's very small, isn't it? Sorry, but we don't need to look at that. that tells our Swift application where all these header files are, where all these library files are, and brings it all together. So that's all of that side. PHP has been compiled, it works on iOS, it's got everything we need to run a Laravel application inside a Swift application. Now what? Well, now we actually need a Swift application. So let's have a look at that. We've got here a native PHP Swift application. I'm just going to pop one of these open so we can have a look and see what this looks like. This is a very ordinary Swift application in many respects. If you've ever written any Swift code, this should look fairly familiar. And the only thing that's really complicated that's going on here is that we're running PHP, which is unusual in the world of Swift applications because essentially no one else has done it. But to get to that point is quite fun. And when it works, it's exhilarating. I'm not going to lie about that. It was great. I'll avoid jumping up and down right now because all that fun is behind me. But yeah, hopefully you'll get a sense of how exciting this was. I want to show, more importantly than the skeleton of a native PHP iOS application, is how on earth do we run PHP when we haven't got a web server? And the thing to do there is all around a web view. We know that a Laravel application basically wants to give you HTML, CSS, and JavaScript at the end of the day. It wants to output all of this content and just be rendered in a browser. So this is a natural starting point. We start with a web view. And the great thing about web views on mobile devices, on iOS in particular, this web view gives us a lot of power. It exposes things like URLs and headers and cookies, and it's very much like you're dealing with a web browser. It can be. And so what we do here is basically tell it we want to receive requests, essentially just URLs, into the web view. And when you see one of those that looks a certain way, do something with the PHP engine under the hood. And so we have this thing in here, which is called a PHP scheme handler. So the web view has been configured. Let's just have a look where that actually is. The web view has been configured here to use a custom scheme handler. What's a scheme? The scheme in normal web usage, let's say, is the bit at the very beginning of the URL. It's the HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, file, colon, // and then a URL. That's the scheme. And browsers by default can handle quite a few of them, but we think mostly about HTTP and HTTPS. In native PHP for iOS, we don't have the luxury of a web server that can listen for HTTP requests. And the WK Web View component in iOS doesn't allow us to override HTTP and HTTPS protocols. So we have to create a custom scheme. And we call this one PHP. And it looks maybe like you would think. Instead of HTTP : / it's PHP. Now I'm trying to find it so I could show you. It's not here. Well, I can't see it. But basically, instead of HTTP, you have PHP : / And then when we put URLs through our application, so here we actually load one of these up. You can see here we load just a very basic URL. We can ignore the apparent IP address. It's not really an IP address. There's no networking going on here. This is just a string. It's an identifier. But we're saying that we want our URL in the web view to look like this. In the web view, the scheme handler is going to pick this up And instead of trying to speak over the network to some server somewhere, it's just trying to call Swift code. And that Swift code calls PHP. And our PHP calls our Laravel application. And our Laravel application returns, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and injects it all into the web view. And when we're running our Laravel application, we can run our custom native PHP extension functions, which will let us run native functionality. So let's look at that for a second, because that's really interesting. When we're running this custom code, remember in the extension, there was no implementation. It was just an empty definition of a function that was waiting to be filled up. We can't actually fill that up in the extension because we don't know on which platform the extension is going to be running. So we don't know which platform our PHP binary is necessarily going to be ready to use. But the language that we're using for the native application itself definitely does know what's available to it. And so here in Swift, we can do something very smart where it can override those no-op functions that we had from before. And in this case, we can then implement the actual logic that we want to take place inside our iPhone application. So for this share sheet one that we were looking at earlier, you can see, and maybe you don't remember all of the details, that's fine, but you can see the same kind of parameters coming in. We do things with those, we check them, and then we basically pass them into the appropriate API in Swift on iOS to do the thing that we want to do. And in this case, it's going to show this share sheet. And that is it. Again, it maybe feels really simple, maybe too simple. Honestly, these get a lot more complicated. You can get a lot more logic in here to cover all sorts of cases. They will become quite convoluted. But on its most basic level, this is really simple stuff. And we're using the PHP paradigm where we're not worrying about shared memory and our request just starts and finishes and everything gets kind of thrown away and we have to build it up from scratch, to real benefit here where we can just use normal approaches to writing Laravel applications, and suddenly we've got access to really powerful native features directly from PHP. This, I think, is incredible, and it's been amazing to get to this point. We've got so much stuff ahead of us, and I think it's going to be incredible to use to build applications rapidly. And for teams that are used to using Laravel, this is going to unlock something really special. So that's been a little bit of a view. You're thinking now, this is amazing. How do I get this? Hopefully. Well, the first thing is you can go and buy a license for it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But once you've got a license, we can do some very simple things. So you would install the package into an existing Laravel application. So you do composer require native PHP iOS. I think I've typed that right. I can't really see it. So once you do that, well, I'm not going to run these things actually because it just wastes time. But once you've done that, you've got the package installed. It will prompt you for your credentials to get the private package. And then you can run the installer. So we have a nice command that just says install. That basically scaffolds all of these files that we've seen here into our application. So it creates this iOS folder and it adds all of the Xcode files to it, and it downloads all of the libraries that we need for actual devices and for the simulator. So we've got different compiled versions for those and the headers. So we bring all of that into place. Now we've got a Laravel application that can run on a device or on the simulator. And then once we've got all of that, we can hit run. Now, I'm not going to do it from here because unfortunately this doesn't work. But I've got a phone right here that's already got this app built onto it. And it would work this way when it works. But, you know, it's early days. We're still figuring a lot of this stuff out. I built this through Xcode. So you have to learn a little bit of Xcode to get to this point. And I'll show you this. I'm not going to show you from my phone in my hand because that would be very annoying. But I'm going to show you the twin native PHP apps, that just so you can see that I'm actually interacting with the phone that you can see on the screen. We're going to open this app that we've been looking at. So this is an Inertia app. And you can see straight away, this one actually has prompted us for push notification authorization. So I'm going to allow that, which is great. That's one of the features that we just added to Native PHP for iOS, where you can now get push notification registration happening just by a couple of simple, really simple PHP function calls. And once you've done that, which prompts the alert, we can hit get token here. It doesn't have it yet, but it will do soon. It just takes a little bit of time, and that's probably because I have got it not connected to the internet. So that's why it hasn't fetched that yet. Maybe it will in a moment. We'll come back to that. That's a really simple and quick view at how we can get Laravel. In this case, it's an Inertia React app running as an iPhone app with native features in tow. What do you think? Is it amazing? Is it good? Okay, on to the less fun part. Let's talk about what we can learn from all of this. I think this has been an incredible journey. Native PHP right from the beginning, trying to figure out how to make it work on desktop, and now getting to the point where we're actually doing native functionality on phones. Many people have said on this journey, it's like magic. I've even said it's like magic. And I remember a quote from a writer called Arthur C. Clarke. Many people will be aware of this quote where he said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." I actually want to change that a little bit, because whilst magic is great and it's fun and it's exciting, it's also quite secretive and it's quite hard. And I say that because I was really bad at doing the little card tricks with my hands. I could never figure out how to manipulate the things in the right way. And when people showed me tricks, I was always a bit too slow and I couldn't figure the trick out. So I was always frustrated. And I've definitely fallen into the category of the rest of us and not a wizard. And it made me think, you know, it's not magic at all. This is just about going on the journey, embracing what's in front of you and taking the first step. And in many ways, I think it's like mountain climbing. This has been an incredible mountain to go through, to go up and around and finding all of the obstacles as you go along and figuring all of this out. The thing is, like any big journey, it takes some very specific skills. Why has it jumped to that slide? I do not know. It's in the wrong place entirely. This is the slide that we should have been starting on. That explains so much. I'll give you a chance to read this line, because this is what I wanted to see first. These are the skills that we're talking about: patience, perseverance, and persistence. This is the main lesson that I've learned from this journey. It's not about magic tricks and pulling the wool over people's eyes or smoke and mirrors. It's about putting in the hard work, using the skills that I already have, using the tools that I have available to me, putting in the effort, and seeing it through. What are some of the tools that we've got? Well, as I've said, we've got PHP has got this embedded way of building itself. And I didn't know about that originally. That was something that was new to me a year ago. And it was that unlocked for me that this is even possible. But it was still a ton of effort to get to that point. I actually, although we do have the static PHP CLI library, I couldn't use that to begin with because it required too much work to figure out how to make it build for iOS in the way that I wanted to do. So I had to use other tools at my disposal. There's a lot of prior work in compiling PHP. There's kind of online books to help, like the PHP internals documentation. I don't know where that slide's gone. I don't know what's happening to my slides. But there are all sorts of things that we can get from the internet to help us along the way. But it is still going to be a journey. Oh, there's that one that I wanted, a PHP. What? Sorry, my mouse is being crazy. So this was a really good resource, PHP internals book, if you want to compile PHP in any way. It doesn't give us all of the details of how to do this on iOS. And it doesn't really prepare you for how you're going to compile, how many times you're going to compile PHP and it's going to fail, and you're going to struggle with trying to figure out why this one dependency has failed this one time and not all of those other times. This really takes patience and perseverance. Yeah, you also need the right kit. There's nothing really else to say about that. If you don't have good stuff that's going to help you build these things, or you can access some of these tools, that's going to be a bit tricky. But yeah, getting to this point where we sort of climbed, this is almost the first base camp, you know, of climbing the mountain. We're just getting used to the change in pressure, the effort that it takes to lift our legs up and carry our bags and all of our weights. But we still don't know all of the things that are coming up in front of us. We can't know the sheer cliff faces that we've got to face up to and climb over. We can't know all the jagged rocks that are going to cut us and hurt us and make us twist our ankles and that kind of thing. You have to be prepared for just days of being stumped and not really knowing where to go next. Just kind of letting your brain churn over some of the things that are challenging you. So don't rush through all of this stuff. Take your time. You might be aware of some of the obstacles that are coming or that are going to come up on your journey of whatever it is that you're trying to solve. But honestly, the worst ones, and this sounds bad, but you know, it's an analogy. The worst ones are the ones that you don't know that you don't know. Thankfully, in this journey, it's not life or death. We're not talking about potentially falling off a cliff and that kind of thing. But there are still a lot of scary things. I didn't know how to compile an application. I'd never done that before. I didn't understand configure commands and package tools and all of these different things outside of the PHP world. I had to learn a little bit of all of these things. And that's where other tools that have really only become available in the last few years have helped. I will say you should embrace AI, if you want to call it that. It's an incredible tool. It's helped me immensely to get all of this stuff figured out. I didn't know Swift. I didn't know how to compile PHP. I really had barely written any C code. So being able to bring all of this stuff together really was only possible because I was using this tool and others to bring all of this information together and make it easily accessible and digestible. I asked it tons of questions. I used it every single day. I spent a lot of money actually trying to get this thing to give me the answers. And it worked. It helped me. I learned so much because of this incredible tool. I didn't look at it as I can just throw it the question that build iOS, PHP for iOS for me, and then expect the perfect output. I went in with, I know this, but I need help here. Can you help? And it did. It gave me a lot of rubbish as well. Again, this requires perseverance. You have to fight with the system a little bit. You have to meet those cliff faces and you have to scale them. And sometimes you have to scale back and then try again the next day or the next week. One of the things that I want to share here that I think is really useful is with ChatGPT. I don't know if you can do this with other models, but you can prompt it with like a persistent prompt that gets added in every prompt that you make. And this is an example of one that I used. This prompt helped greatly because basically it kept coming back with, before I did this, it kept coming back with tons and tons of stuff, all the changes, all of the explanation, all of the detail that I'd already read maybe a few minutes before. But when I gave it just a little bit of coaxing in the right direction, it started to bring back really useful content for me. And this was invaluable. I keep this approach now with all of my ChatGPT stuff. The thing that I think is really important to just generally bear in mind with all of these kinds of projects, to make the mountain even remotely scalable, is to make it as easy as you possibly can. We've already talked about using the tools and the skills that you've got. You can't expect the things that are there to solve your problems. But what you can do is minimize as much of the problem that's in front of you to the smallest piece possible. For example, with this building of PHP, I could have taken the view that I wanted to make all of PHP and all of the extensions work for iOS. But there's really no need. It only needs a few. In fact, many of the PHP extensions that you might be used to probably wouldn't even work on iOS. And that really intentionally limited the scope of the work that I had to do. Yes, it was still a lot, but it was a lot less than it could have been. So cut the stuff that you really don't need. Be critical with the things that you're trying to do and rationalize stuff away. If you possibly can, make it as easy as possible. Don't forget, you are also a talented software engineer. You have a propensity and the skills to build solutions to make your life easier. So do that. Don't go just hunting for the tools that are available. Don't be afraid to make your own. Build things that are going to help you automate things, that are going to help you solve those problems. Build testing frameworks, build prototypes, do all of the little pieces of work that are going to add up to the bigger piece of work. You can't vibe code your way through some of these harder problems. Not yet, at least. There were many times when the LLM would take me backwards more than forwards. Maybe one day, those tools, I don't know how soon, but those tools will be capable of much more. But right now, for some of these challenges, it's not that day. The other thing that I thought was really, really important throughout this whole thing, which I'm looking back on, I'm kind of grateful that I did this, was to take notes. And this is just a screenshot of my Notion, one of the Notion pages that I had. This is the scribbles of a madman, honestly. There's tons of stuff in here that doesn't make any sense. It certainly doesn't make any sense anymore. It's not relevant. But at the time, getting my thoughts out of my head and onto paper, the screen, really helped to just crystallize a whole bunch of things. This is an invaluable way of learning new things and building solutions over long periods of time. I can't tell you how many times I came back to my notes and was like, oh, that's where I left off. I can pick up again rather than having to start from scratch. That's probably saved me weeks of my life, I'd like to think. The final thing, the most important thing through any of these kind of journeys where we're trying to solve these hard problems or seemingly hard problems, you have to stay motivated. For me, that was kind of easier because I did something that I didn't think it was possible for me to do, which was to put a talk proposal in which got accepted for Laracon EU. And that really did light a fire under my butt and get me to work. And it motivated me to the point where I do things that I've never done before, like waking up early in the morning and getting all of the other priority things out of the way so that I can focus my attention on the thing that I really wanted to do. Maybe for you, you can give yourself a kind of a deadline, make some commitment to somebody, give yourself some accountability to drive you towards the motivation that you need in order to finish the thing that you're trying to do. And this is kind of the finish where we started, unfortunately, but my view on this is, magic isn't real, but scaling mountains is real. Magic aims to make the impossible seem possible, but scaling a mountain is about proving what seems to be impossible, that it can actually be possible. And that's why I want to focus your attention on being less of a magician and more of a mountain climber. The PHP community is incredible. The Laravel community especially. I love it. I love everybody in this community. And I think that it needs more mountain climbers. It needs more of these adventurers, people who will patiently persevere and persist in solving all these weird and wonderful problems. And more importantly, sharing what they've learned along the way. And that's hopefully what I've been able to do a little bit today. In that way, we can leave a trail for others to follow and make the mountain scalable for more to come. As I said before, in the next few weeks, the work that I've done on the static PHP CLI library will be open sourced, so it will be available to everyone. That will allow, hopefully, many of you to explore building different solutions using PHP on iOS. And I think that that's going to open the door to lots of possibilities. As for native PHP for mobile, the climb isn't over. We'll talk about some of this maybe in a moment, but I want to share one final thing with you. We have got Android also working. And this is thanks to Shane Rosenthal, who's working with me. I just want to show you this. I haven't got it on my phone. This is a video that he did. I think this is a Flux app. I'm sure he'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's here. You can see it's interacting with the database. It's It's got all the nice JavaScript stuff working. It's very fast. And it's got native functionality too. So the journey isn't over. The climb is continuing. But we're along for the ride. And I want to also share a brand new, I shouldn't have swiped back to that. Just today, we released a brand new native PHP website. So this is a very beautiful website that's been built by Hassan Sahernia, who's done quite a few projects in the community. Thank you, Hassan. This is wonderful. Please check it out. On top of that, we've got some new pricing options for native PHP for mobile. So we started off with just this top tier, but as we're moving towards making it more and more available to everybody, you can get a license now for as little as $50 during the EAP. Great. I hope that you will consider joining us on the journey, supporting us at least so that we can scale this mountain, and show your appreciation for all of the effort that's gone into building these incredible things by supporting this project. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Simon. That's
Awesome. Thanks so much, Simon.
very cool. Yes, I without you saying it to us, I knew that there's a lot of headache probably went into that, and a lot of pound your head against the wall and trying to figure stuff out. And I think you kind of, or actually, Simon, I'm still getting a little bit of audio feedback in the background. I think.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
no problem.
Turn that down.
One of the questions I had off the top was just sort of, I think so many things you go to implement, even if it's just in the stock Laravel app, there's parts of the implementation you're not sure about at the start, right? And more complex things, there might be a bunch more. It strikes me as something like this. Like I would feel, it would feel daunting to me to go into it. There'd be like 100 things I don't know how to do, right? And you want to kind of break it down and like, all right, let's focus on this thing, and then maybe eventually you can start gluing some things together. So I guess my question is where did it start for you? Like, how did you start? What was one of the first few things you figured out? It kind of gave you maybe the feeling that this is possible.
Well, I mean, it all really started with native PHP for desktop, because one of the things that I was trying to do at the time when I kind of almost stumbled across doing this was building it into a Tory application. And you might have heard of Tory. It's kind of a competitor to Electron. And one of the things that I really wanted to try and achieve there was to just not have to have web servers. So if you're not familiar with the way that native PHP for desktop currently works inside Electron, we have a web server on the Electron side and we have a web server on the PHP side. And that's very convenient, but it's a little bit heavyweight, and there's some security considerations around how we kind of lock that down. And it's very secure right now, and it's going to become more secure in the future. But if we can get rid of some of those things, it would be even more secure. So I kind of started with that premise. Can I just do this without a web server? And I found ways to do that. I found ways to make sort of Laravel and PHP work in this way. And then I kind of discovered that, hey, I can actually just embed this into an existing shell, and then it sort of unlocked for me. So does that answer your question?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Cool. I would just feel, it would feel so daunting to start for me, but yeah, definitely. You got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I just saw a question come through the chat that I had on my mind too. In concept, is it possible, Liam's wondering, is it possible to have like a single code base that I could run a web application on, and then also port that out to and run on iOS or maybe Android in the future?
I mean, this is an ideal idea, where we can just build once and run everywhere. And I think the reality is that, phones are just so very different from desktop devices. And you don't really want to be shipping all of that code for all of these things to all of the places. That introduces lots of bloat, it introduces lots of complexity and potentially lots of risk. So I would say for now, you really want to focus in on just building the mobile thing, build the desktop thing, build the web thing as separate things. And And maybe, with AI and the advent of newer technologies in the coming years, we'll figure out better ways of making all of this stuff work across multiple platforms from one code base. But I think personally, I think it's a bit of a pipe dream to try and build in one place and have it run everywhere.
Makes sense. Maybe a quick question here about some pricing. The EAP pricing, is that locked in forever, or is it just a 1-year discount?
That's forever. So if you come in now and you renew at the price that you're set, then it'll be like that as long as you renew before it expires. We'll honor it.
Excellent. Okay.
Cool. I just had a comment as well. Comment and then a question, I guess, Simon. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how starting something, I mean, creating a tool for the community, it starts from having a problem, right? And so being able to show and kind of explain how you got there, I think was super interesting to me, at least, for being able to, I don't know, where to even get started, how to use certain tools like ChatGPT, or just learning how to start to finish. I'm curious with all that I just said, like, how long did this take you? Like, when did it kind of start? Where are you at with it right now? What's more to come? I guess kind of that's more the realm of the question that I have.
I really started on this in earnest probably back in the end of 2022. But the idea originally kind of came up through some work that Marcel was actually doing some years before, trying to get, I think it was Laravel 0 running on like in a kind of distributable way. So you didn't have to have PHP on your computer to run a command line application written in PHP. And that he tweeted something about that, and I liked the idea, and I saw some of the stuff that he was using, and I went down the rabbit hole of like investigating this stuff, and I was like, there is something incredible here, there's something fantastic that's just like on the cusp of coming out, but nobody seemed to be doing it. And I've always wanted to be able to just take the skills that I've got, PHP and Laravel, and just apply it to all of these different areas. We can do so much with PHP already, and I think we should I'm definitely of the mind of like, what can't we do with PHP really? I just want to explore all of those things. And basically give me a challenge. Let's get PHP running on a Tesla or something.
Yeah, exactly. I found that so interesting in that time period as well. Like 2022, that was like on the cusp right before AI and using all these like AI tools like ChatGPT. I guess when ChatGPT came out, or like all the other AI platforms, did that kind of accelerate things even faster for you, or just kind of make things easier? I went away.
I would say yes. Caveat, like initially those tools weren't as good as they are now. So it made experimenting with certain ideas a little bit easier. And then, you'd kind of go away and do the traditional Stack Overflow and try and dig out old posts from forums and things. So I think in a way, adopting some of those newer technologies earlier did help just generally speed some stuff up. But I definitely think in the last maybe 6 months or so, maybe even less than that, it's advanced so much further that it's incredibly helpful, where, I can say quite happily that I will copy paste just some stuff that's come out of the output, and it just works when I put it into, the Swift application. Now, obviously, I still believe that you should review that code properly and you should understand it. But I think if you've got the starting point of it's there and it works, and you've then got the attitude of like, well, I do want to understand this stuff, then you're in a good place, because you can learn a lot and you can learn a lot faster.
Oh, definitely. There's these words that I've heard from somebody who maybe heard it from somebody else, but it's the people that are using AI, they're going to get a lot faster and more ahead of the people who aren't using it. So it's awesome to show kind of what you've used. That's awesome.
Simon, there's a few questions that are maybe sort of in the same, I'll put them in the same bucket. So, and it kind of relates to sort of maybe how native PHP for mobile might compare to some alternatives, right? Building it, truly natively for an application, React Native, Flutter was mentioned. Bless you. I think I saw some chatter on Twitter where I think you were responding to something Aaron Francis said, and you said something to the effect of like Reddit has some opinions about native PHP and native PHP. And I'm sure it does, right? And so you could make 100 arguments or a bunch of arguments why maybe this isn't the best solution, right? But maybe just like, where do you see this solution fitting into some alternatives? Is it actually a replacement for some of them? And why might you reach for this versus some alternatives?
Yeah, that's a lot. So I think like the first thing is kind of addressing is this really native? And that depends. It's all about perspective. I think what we're doing, what we've shown is this is native functionality being operated from PHP, and it's not going to be as performant as just the Swift application, compiled application doing things in its most efficient way, but it gets us to a place which for some of us that will be a nice place, where I can use the skills and the tools that I have, and that's great. I think in comparison to these other things, it's obvious right now, hopefully, that native PHP for mobile is not very far along compared to, the sort of big budget frameworks that are out there, like React Native and Flutter, and there's like new ones coming along seemingly every day. And by all means, I think you should go and use those tools if you've got a production high quality application that you need to build, that needs performance, that needs the different libraries that are available and all of that. Definitely use the right tool at the right time. But I can tell you that we are very excited about being able to do this for PHP. And I can see a future not too far away where we're able to use Laravel and maybe even other PHP frameworks and tools to build really rich, really robust, really performant native applications. And it just be kind of so familiar with the stuff that we're already using. And you won't have to go and learn like a whole new ecosystem, and you won't have to go and learn a whole new set of libraries and languages. And you won't have to go and necessarily join other communities. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You should join other communities, but our time and energy is limited. And I think that when you can embrace something that's closer to what you already know, that's an advantage. And I'm hoping to put that into practice, by building all of this stuff out and building projects for clients and other people. So, and for myself, I'm just like hobby doing stuff with this. So it's a great thing from my point of view to be able to do that, where ordinarily I'd have to kind of go down the path of doing a whole load of learning about other stuff. Yeah, maybe AI assisted learning, but still it's completely new versus what I already know. And I think the things that we're going to see as this starts to evolve and take proper shape is advantages that we've never really seen between mobile and web before, where stuff that's really relies on developers to build and think about these hard problems like APIs and integrating one platform with another across the network will eventually just dissolve, because when you've got Laravel on one side and Laravel on the other, you can just make it just work, and it will just work, and it's going to be really smooth. And that's stuff that we're already exploring as well. So I'm excited to share more about that in the coming months.
Yeah. I think that is huge, right? Just like, this is a thing already. You could now build mobile applications with a technology already. And, maybe down the road you get more into it and you do have a use case where you need to go fully native, fully in Swift or something like that, right? But this is a great place to get started, right? I think I would much rather take this approach than the approach, like you said, of like having to invest all this overhead in learning a new tech stack, right? So,
I guess in that, sorry, just similar, kind of extending that a little bit. Are there any specific use cases where native PHP could shine in?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know at the moment because it's just too early days, but I think the the fact that you can go from basically just having a Laravel, starter kit, and then within 2 minutes you can have it running in an iPhone application is pretty powerful. I don't know too many tools that you can just get going with like that, if unless you already know them very well, you already got well into the ecosystem of the tools and things that are available. And I don't know all of those ecosystems intimately, but for me, kind of trying to pick up React Native and Flutter and these other things just to like explore them, it was always like, well, I'm bumping into this and I'm having to solve that. But with the PHP stuff, I know where I am, I know what I'm doing, and I can get going so much faster. And I think that's kind of the main advantage right now. I think that there might be use cases that come up in the future that are kind of, this is really good for. But I think generally one of the things that's kind of overlooked is that the web technologies that we kind of take for granted are amazing for building these UIs. And we tend to shy away from doing it at the moment, whereas I think Laravel is really great at building those. So we should embrace that, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure there's lots to look forward to. That's awesome. One other question. Oh, sorry, Dan. Or if you want to continue on with it, my question is completely different. So
it was just kind of piggybacking that the different language concept, and it's a pure curiosity question, Simon. Like in your presentation there, you showed there's pieces of this solution that involve the PHP language, there's pieces of the solution that involve the C language, and there's pieces of the solution that involve Swift. Roughly, like what's the breakdown in percentage? Like how much Swift versus how much C versus how much PHP was required to implement?
There's almost no PHP. Like the Laravel site, is just Laravel. Whatever your application is going to be, that's most of the PHP. There is just a little bit just to like hook certain things into the right places, but it's minimal. I would say mostly it's Swift right now for the iOS stuff. That's kind of where the bulk of the work is. And the C, I mean, we looked at that one C file. There's basically no other C files that I've had to create to get this working. And that was just the native PHP extension, the custom extension that we built. And yeah, that is, again, very minimal. So I kind of feel like I've been mostly working in Swift the last few months with this stuff at least. But it kind of just then unlocks you to just do more of this in PHP. And that's the thing that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So one other question that I had, more so on the topic of like creating a tool like this, if you could redo like one part of this process, knowing what you know now, what would you approach differently?
Wow. That is very tough. I think probably I would have spent a lot more time trying to get the the static PHP CLI library that I was showing, get that working in the way that I wanted to, because having that sort of reproducibly building PHP and all of its dependencies over and over is an absolute lifesaver right now. Like I managed to build one version at the end of December or beginning of January, and I was like, oh my God, it works. And then minutes later I try again and it's broken because I knocked something over. It's just really, really unreliable. And that is really frustrating when you've got this stuff that's just in a state. And yeah, I mean, one of the things that I learned very quickly was I need to get all of this into Git so that I can see when I'm changing all of this stuff and, try and understand how it's evolving as I'm sort of progressing through solving these problems. So yeah, just maybe if I'd had more time, I think, then I would have done that.
Oh, for sure. How human of you. So that's awesome for sure.
I wasn't clear, Simon, from is this like, are you looking for active like contributions from the community as well for this at this point? Or I guess my question is like, if I'm interested in this project and I want to maybe help contribute to it, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah. So native PHP for desktop is fully open source. Welcome, we gladly welcome contributions, and we've had some incredible ones that have advanced the project. So please do get involved in that way with that if you're interested in the desktop stuff. If you're more interested in the mobile stuff, which I can completely understand, right now it's closed source, and we haven't got like an arrangement set up that's kind of really appropriate for contributions, but it's something that will work out. I'm very keen to get a version of this to be open source. We're licensing it in a way that it will be open source eventually. And so, yeah, eventually, I don't know exact timeframes, but we'll have the opportunity for people to get really involved in a much more significant way. And I think just to kind of add the rider to that, one of the reasons why we're doing it this way is because we want to make this sustainable. We want to build this tool, make it great, and keep on supporting it and making it grow. And we're not Meta, we're not Google. It's just a couple of people working too many hours in the week to kind of throw this stuff together. So, if you can support us by just getting a license at this stage, that's incredibly helpful, and we'll be forever in your debt.
Awesome. Okay. Maybe do one more question from the chat. I guess maybe just sort of a higher level question here from Liam. Simon, what are your long-term goals for native PHP, and maybe that were just mobile as well, after compiling, deploying to all environments? What kind of specific features would you love?
That's deep. There's so many things. I think we haven't really even started to scratch the surface of what you can do on the desktop side of things. There's stuff, and not just limited by Electron. I mean, now that we're kind of talking about having our own custom native extensions and calling the device, the platform APIs directly. There's all sorts of things that we could unlock there, that you'd be able to do that you wouldn't be able to do with just an Electron application without a lot of headache. So that's really interesting there. I think for mobile, there's tons of stuff. Like the immediate ones are in-app purchases and VR, AR things, like all these wild, crazy, whatever the Apple and whoever chuck into these devices. We basically have the opportunity to like tap into all of that in PHP. So I think, whatever your imagination, wherever it takes you with what you want to try and build, is what I want to make available. So, I'd love to see people building really cool, different apps with Laravel on an iPhone and Android. So, yeah, that's keeping me excited and motivated for all of this stuff.
All right. Any other questions for you, Margaret?
Those are all my questions. Thank you so much, Simon.
Just had maybe one more high-level question, Simon. You mentioned like static PHP CLI, that library being kind of really integral to making this all work, right? And as a result of using that library, I guess, have you had any other interesting like thoughts of like, oh, now that I know how to use this, I could also run PHP here? Any other interesting places you'd like to run PHP other than a mobile device?
I mean, I kind of joked about putting in a car, but I did actually talk to somebody about that. So that could be kind of fun. I mean, we've got so many devices around us that when you crack them open and kind of explore what's going on underneath, I mean, it's all basically C, and it's just like these embedded bits of code. And, as long as it's sort of small enough and it's performant enough, then I don't see why you couldn't put PHP in a watch or, in a TV or some kind of robotic frog swimming through a swimming pool. Who knows? But
I was going to say, yeah, the smart TV experience can't be too much worse with PHP than any other solution. Sounds like a great idea. Cool. All right. Anything else you wanted to mention, Simon, about native PHP or otherwise before we sign off?
I just one shout out. So there's been some amazing contributors to native PHP, and just today, one of them, his wife has given birth to a new little baby. So that's Willem Luverink, who's done incredible work over the last few months. And just give him congrats and wish him well, and his partner and his new baby.
Absolutely. Congratulations. once again, Simon, thank you so much for joining us. This is an incredibly ambitious and interesting project. Definitely takes us out of the realm of the CRUD apps maybe we're building day in and day out. So very cool, and very excited to see kind of where things go in the future. And yeah, would encourage anyone who's interested in the project, go ahead and grab a license. And yeah, if you want to maybe check out Native PHP for desktop as well, you can contribute there as well. All right. Well, thank you very much, Simon. We're just going to pop you backstage, and we just got a couple community things here to wrap up the stream.
Thank you.
All right. And to finish things off, Margaret, we've just got a few community things. So let's have a look here. Looking ahead to next month.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. So next month, please join us on April 29th. We are going to have Samuel join us to do a great talk. So you're going to definitely want to check that out. And more details will be posted on our website. So make sure to sign up for updates, and you'll get an email reminder for that as well. And for our JetBrains giveaway, please scan this QR code. Again, this contest will be running until April 1st. So you'll win a chance to win one of 2 JetBrains product licenses for an entire year. And the giveaway is open internationally. So please scan that QR code and you will get an email if you have won. And make sure to follow us on X. So you can follow us at Laravel WW Meetup. You can make sure if you follow us, you can make sure that you will get all the notifications about what's going on, when our next meetup is. You could also talk to us on here as well, kind of talk to us about any kind of talks you want to look forward to. We'd love to hear from you. So please connect with us. And another way to stay connected is to join us on meetup.laravel.com. You can sign up for all of our events and get an email notification right before the event, all of our future events as well. And then thanks for watching us on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. There's a lot of great other content on the Laravel YouTube channel, so you don't want to miss out on that. So make sure to hit subscribe and stay tuned.
And there we have it. I'd like to once again thank Simon for joining us this month. I would like to thank all of you for tuning in and checking it out. We're looking very much forward to next month when we meet you again. So until then, have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you.